Thanks, Walter. As a preface, let me indicate to you, I don't know how many people on this program have received Paycheck Protection Program loans. We call it PPP. The program is open until June 30th. That's the last day they will accept applications. There is money available. I know many in the restaurant and hospitality industries were reluctant to participate after quickly grabbing onto the program because of the uncertainties. On June 5th, there was a recent amendment of the flexibility of the Paycheck Protection Program called the Flexibility Act that extended the forgiven period from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. So if there are people on the program who have not yet taken loans because of the uncertainties, it is worth revisiting the program to see if you may be interested now. But I would move quickly and work with the local lender to see how that may be beneficial to you. What I want to focus on is the employment aspect for those persons who are participating in the program. The way the PPP works is you apply with a local lender for a loan, which is based on 2.5 months of payroll. And then you have a forgiven period, which was 8 weeks. It has now been extended to 24 weeks or through the end of the year, December 31st, whichever comes first. And then you can seek forgiveness of your properly expended funds for both payroll and non-payroll costs, so that that loan amount basically becomes a grant, and any monies that you don't expend become a 1% loan. The term was 2 years. For new loans, it will be 5 years, and the Flexibility Act allowed that you would have the ability to work with your lender to extend your loan term from 2 years to 5 years. So if you have a loan and you're worried about the period of your back-end loan, work with your lender. So, but I want to focus on here for purposes of this program is the employment aspect. As you may know, if your employment changes during the period of your forgiveness, your covered period, the 8 weeks or the 24 weeks at your election, your forgiven amount may be reduced by the proportion of your employment loss. So the way the PPP calculates employment is based on a full-time equivalent. So the first step is to determine on a 40-hour week basis how those employees are calculated. You determine a weekly average, and then you need to compare that to a period, and there are several periods which you can elect your option that would be most beneficial. The CARES Act also allows a more simplified calculation where you can assign a value of 1 to a full-time employee and half to a part-time employee and run the same math and compare your averages. If your employment count becomes reduced during the covered period, it's the proportional reduction of your total forgiveness amount. So it's not just your payroll costs that get reduced, it would be your non-payroll as well. So your total amount of loan forgiveness will be reduced by the percentage of your employment count reduction. So go ahead, Beth. Because there may be, especially in these industries, in the hospitality industries, employee modifications, the Flexibility Act has modified a little bit how we can excuse employee counts so it doesn't work a reduction of our forgiveness amount. We've called those safe harbors or exemptions. Employees that leave or are laid off or are furloughed do not count for purposes of your forgiveness reduction if they have refused a written offer to return, if they voluntarily resign, if they're fired for cause, or if they have voluntarily requested and received a reduction in hours. What I would emphasize here, and I know Beth mentioned it earlier, but documentation is going to be key. The SBA has indicated that loan amounts over $2 million will be audited. They've reserved the right to audit any loan amount under $2 million at any time. There are document submission requirements when you apply for forgiveness. So if you are seeking exemption of an employee who has otherwise left, you should be able to document both the written offer to return and their written refusal. If they don't have a written refusal, you should document your effort to secure that written refusal. Because the forgiveness program is still relatively new, and the rules are changing under the Flexibility Act, it's really hard to give concrete guidance, but I would emphasize document, document, document. The other change here that I want to highlight is under what the SBA has termed an interim final rule, which was implemented on May 22nd. If you have an employee who has rejected an offer of reemployment, you are now required to notify the Vermont the Employment Board, that they have rejected that offer. We don't know yet how that is going to play out. The SBA said they would provide on their website a copy of the notice or the means for doing so. We don't know what means is necessary. But again, if there is an audit and you seek to excuse an employee who left because they failed to accept a written offer, but you have not notified the state, it may be that your forgiveness would be decreased because your exemption wouldn't be allowed. So if you do have employees, you've offered the opportunity to return to work and they've refused, you do need now under the CARES Act to notify the state if you are seeking forgiveness of that amount. So go ahead, Beth. The Flexibility Act added several new exemptions for forgiveness as well. Loan forgiveness, if there is an FTE reduction, will be disregarded if the borrower can document in good faith that A, they were unable to rehire individuals who were either furloughed or laid off as of February 15th, and you were not able to hire a similarly qualified employee for that position. Now, that's been extended to the end of the year, December 31, 2020, because we now have the 24-week under the Flexibility Act. What's not clear, because the SBA has not issued promised guidance yet under the Flexibility Act, is what happens to an employee who was let go and then brought back, and then let's say in September subsequently it becomes necessary to let them go again. It's not clear whether that hurdle repeats or whether it is satisfied once. So I wish I had better guidance for that for you. But what I would suggest is that you keep a close eye on that. We do have a COVID resource page on our firm website at DRM. And we are keeping that current, but as those rules come out, it will be very important to know whether it's a one and done or whether we need to continue looking at employment rates through the end of the year, which I suspect will be the case. The other significant change under the Flexibility Act that is of significant benefit to this industry is you will be excused for employee reductions if the reduction is based on an inability to return to the same level of business activity as existed before February 15th due to guidance or compliance with COVID laws, whether it's through Human Services, OSHA, governor's orders that relate to sanitation, social distancing, worker or customer safety requirements, and it's COVID related. So for example, if a restaurant is forced to operate at 50% capacity and that causes a reduction in your need for employment levels, that may be excused. So again, document everything. I don't know yet how this rule is going to be implemented. It was just put in place on June 5th and the rules aren't yet in place from SBA. Significantly, and I'll use the example of a restaurant reduced to 50%. While the restaurant may be entitled to an exemption from its employee reduction, a secondary service, let's say a food supplier or a linen service, that also now suffers the 50% reduction. You're using 50% fewer tablecloths. The benefit doesn't extend to the secondary industry. It is just the primary employer at this point, as far as we know under the rules, that's going to get the benefit of that exemption.